Awesome. Let's get into it. Welcome back. Yes, welcome back to Live Lifts. My name's Dr. James. We are live. Let's attack the bar as we do. Nice. 3. Maybe do 3 to 4. Let's jump on this bench, 1 second. Thanks, mate.
Do you need the lift off?
Just to unhook, yeah, and the rest will be fine. Okay.
You count me down.
1, 3, 2, 1. Big lift. That's it. Perfect. My bar. 1. No touch. 2.
Nice.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, mate.
No worries for that.
Ooh.
Give me again, give me a countdown.
Thanks, mate. Whew. Welcome back. Yes. Welcome back to Live Lifts. Amazing. So look, what are we doing today? Let's get straight into it. We are doing numbers don't matter, but we are doing a heavy day on the deadlift. So heavy deadlift, 155. We are supersetting that with heavy bench. It's a lighter day on bench, so we're doing 115. Our working day, the other day we did, what are we doing, 125? So I'm doing a 10 kilo deficit, or 10 kilos less. And that keeps us progressing, keeps us lifting heavy. So we're doing heavy bench, heavy deads. We're throwing some bicep curls at the end. Summer's coming. And we're going to review, we're going to do another research review today. We're going to review a very interesting randomized control trial on testosterone, interleukin 6, and I'll tell you what that is a bit later, interleukin 6 and tumor necrosin factor, used to be known as tumor necrosin factor alpha. So we're going to look at those three. Well, one's a sex hormone, the other two cytokines, or cytokines if you're American. So we'll look at a research called on the effects of heavy resistance training on those 3 blood parameters today. I think it's a very nice article, and we'll talk about that today. So I do like to do the research on this channel as well, and look at the mythbusters, look at the science. So we're doing reps of 3 to 4. I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty strong. I feel like another set, to be honest. So let's get chalked up. But we've had a few, if you've caught the streams from this week, we had a few days rest. I have also been doing some night shifts, so I've had to recover and get my sleep cycle back into sync again, such as the life as a doc. And I am, ooh, wow, feeling good. Right, let's do another set. Let's decompress the lower back just a moment. This feels actually really good, to be honest. Yeah, feel nice and limbered up. Ooh. We've got some debris. Yeah, mate. Some balls are flying. We might get hit by a ball. So if the tripod gets knocked, it gets knocked. Right, let's do the set. It's a good 3 minutes, isn't it? Yeah, the balls are flying. Wow. There's a party going on. Brilliant. Right. Come on. Hopefully I don't get smacked in the face doing a deadlift. That would be a comical moment. Kids can really kick it nowadays, can't they? That was a close one. Right, I'm just gonna have to brave it. If I get hit, so be it. Just don't hit me in the head, because it stings. I'm going to get hit by at least one ball, aren't I? I've got to just take it on the chin. Yeah. Did it. Might have to grab you again. Thanks, mate. Were you comfortable last time? Yeah. Thanks, mate. I think I did 5, yeah. I don't really count them, to be honest. What's your name, mate?
Roy.
Roy. Thanks, Roy. I'm James.
No worries.
Okay. Let's count down. 3, 2, 1.
Lovely. Come on, come on.
I'm looking at that ball.
Come on. Let's focus, come on.
Yep. Awesome, Matt. Nice one, Roy. Whew. Cheers. Thanks, Roy. Thank you. Balls are flying. They're not soft either. I've still got my left leg. I think I've still got my left leg, haven't I? Yeah, the boy's still got it. Haven't played for a number of years. So, how do we feel after the last session? I feel absolutely wonderful. I did have 2 days recovery as usual. It was the last session of the week, so we had a 2-day break. And as I mentioned, I was working some night shifts, so my schedule was a little bit off, but do you know what? I actually was putting on my base layer that I've got on. Not the Nikon that you can see that we reviewed. We reviewed that base layer, the actual warm base layer a few weeks ago. I've actually got a weightlifting suit on underneath. You may have seen in the earlier streams the Adidas weightlifting suit. They don't make them anymore, but they're really classy and they're fantastic material. They're really good for weightlifting. So when I was putting that on today, I honestly felt like my legs and my hips were just, you just feel so full and you know that you're growing. So I'm really happy that for this stage of the season, I'm hitting all my targets, I'm setting new PBs, and do you know what? You can't ask for much more really, as well as a full recovery and feeling healthy, and you're not picking up any little twinges or problems. So I'm really happy with that. So that's how I feel after the last session. In the last session we did, one of them's gonna get, yeah. One of them is like gonna missile, isn't it? What did we do last session? Did we do rope climb? Did we do rope climb? I can't even concentrate, this ball sign everywhere. We did rope climb with bench. And yeah, we did rope climb, bench, and we did military shoulder press as well. And we did that crazy military shoulder press where we went up to 75, which is the season's best. And we had 2 reps for the first set, 2 reps for the second set. Then I failed failed in the next set. I don't know why. And then the set after that, I managed to do 3 reps. Madness. So that just goes to show that we talk about how the importance of the nervous system, of course, in recovery. So maybe, thinking about it, maybe if we apply our principles, the first 2 sets, we needed that as a kind of warm-up stimulation. The third set, I have no idea how or why I was so fatigued. And then for the final set, I just managed to bang out 3 reps. I just don't know. I think I was obviously a bit more charged up. Maybe there's a bit more input. Maybe the failure let the nervous system know how much it needed to recruit in order to fire up and contract. Interesting when put into practice. So looking forward to doing the research article today as well, which is, as I mentioned, it's on testosterone levels, endogenous, meaning produced by the body. So testosterone levels, interleukin 6, which is an inflammatory marker, and tumor necrosis factor, TNF, which is it can either cause inflammation, depending on which mode it's in. It can either cause inflammation, or it can cause growth, depending on which receptor it attaches onto, and we'll chat a bit about that later. Right, we're doing supersets. I think we've got in the tank for one more set on the deadlift. Whew. Those balls are absolutely flying. Oh. Just pop these AirPods. Just about. Okay. Awesome, right. I think we're good for another go. Let's do our third set. Focus. Got one eye on these balls, mate. They're flying. Feeling good. Just trying to get 3 or 4 out. Whew. Got to keep the shoulders back. Those lats activated. Right, I reckon. Yeah. So maybe wait for Roy to finish his set. See if Roy's free. He's having a rest. Oh, next set. Wait for Roy, he's got one more leg to do. He'll be all right. Pretty happy actually. Happy with the form as well. Feels full. Thanks, Roy. Thank you, mate. Do you need a bit of a breather? Do you need a breather? Do you need a breather? You all right?
No.
Sound. Okie doke. Okay. Nice and steady. 3, 2, 1. Yep, my butt. 1.
Easy.
2.
Lovely. Easy. Come on, 2 more. You done. Come on. Come on. 1 more. Big one. Big push. Big push. Big push.
Yep. Nice. Solid. Cheers. Thanks, Roy. Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Thanks, Roy. Yes. Yeah, that's good. 155 on there, sound. 155. And we've got heavy squats, haven't we? So, whew. Yeah, that's awesome. Just decompress my back. Hold on a second, guys. All good. Yeah. Couple of sets on bench. Do some biceps. Do one more set on this deadlift. Because I'm managing 4 reps and it's achievable. So I want to get as much volume in without completely draining the nervous system, knowing, again, you're not saving yourself, but you want to work optimally every session so you can keep the consistency up as well. Whew. But I feel like we could definitely do one more set of 4. A couple of sets of bench, biceps. Awesome. So thanks for joining the stream, guys. Thumbs up on the vids. We also reviewed the Lacoste base layer leggings as well recently. I do recommend go out and buy them actually. They're really good leggings. They did score a 10 out of 10. The whole kit scored a 10 out of 10. And I think there was one thing I forgot to mention is, you might not be, but if you are a member of like a sports club or a private sports club, and sometimes there's a certain dress code, I don't know, they play like tennis, they might play tennis or golf. Well, you might play tennis or golf there. It's the type of kit you can wear if you're playing sports of that kind of venture as well. Or if you're just obviously playing casual 5-a-side or lifting weights in the gym, of course, yeah. But if you are part of a members club or private club as well, I think they look really classy. Because there's sometimes strict rules about what you can wear in and around the places. But I think that is something that will pass the criteria if you do have criteria. So do go and catch that stream. And that comes under the versatility. There's a versatility, how versatile the equipment is as well. Like you wear it socially, casually, and sound, no, sound mate. Sound. No sound. It's even, it's sound, honestly, sound. Let's go across. Don't mind. Yeah, 4 sets of 5, 4 sets of 4 and we are at a 90, and this is our 90%, we're working at 90%-ish, 91%-ish, so I think it's pretty good really. Trying to push up about 5 kilos a week, or every time we do it, 2.5 to 5 kilos. Right, we're ready for the last one. I might ask this guy to spot us actually. Save Roy's shoulder. I think Roy said he had a bad shoulder. Last one. Grip. I'm going to do one more rep. The grip demon bites again. One more with a grip hold at the end, and then we'll drop it. Or we'll take the negative. We'll take the negative because we should. Right. Yeah. Yep. A quick spot from this guy. See if it's free. Could you spot me? Is that all right?
How many left?
5 on the bench. All you need to do is just to unhook. Is that all right? You don't need to touch the bar. First rule of live lifts. Don't touch the bar. Don't panic. Okay, so just to unhook, and then no need to touch the bar, should be fine.
So, okay.
Okay, wait, 3. I'll count you in. Okay, nice and smooth, okay? 3, 2, 1, big lift. Perfect, mate. Yep. Awesome, mate. Yes. Fantastico. Thank you. Thank you, mate. Just one more set, I think. Thank you very much. Yes. So yeah, on my light days, do you know what? I am still getting a lot of volume in on my lighter days. So if I feel like doing a 6 rep set or a 5 rep set and doing 5 or 6 reps, I absolutely don't mind. Because the deload day, if people do a deload day, I don't particularly like it because I feel like it completely takes away all of the footballs. It completely takes away all of the stimulation and the stress. Now you do need to recover, but I think you can still do that with it's like kind of like having an active recovery. So it's built into the program. That's why I don't mind doing more volume and more reps on the lighter days. Right, I'm going to break this down, and that's what works for me. But of course, let me know what you guys like to do and how you guys do it. You guys might be lifting a lot heavier than me or a lot lighter, and your adaptation and stress might be a bit different. So what works for you? Let me know. I have found though from years of doing this that kind of a built-in deload really does keep you ticking over. Particularly from a balance point of view. So for example, on the bench press, you'll actually feel like your wrists and your elbows feel like really unsteady, even if you've had like a week break. And I think that kind of fits with how the nervous system is set up from a sensory point of view. Like your fingers and wrists and toes and ankles are much further away from the center of the body. So the finer movements are always a bit harder to train. And also they waste away a lot quicker. Look at that, that's stood up. Let's get this put away. Do some bicep curls. One more set of bench. So built-in supersets on the heavy day. Nice. I think we've put this over here actually. Sip of water. I certainly feel it. Like if you've had like a week off from doing bench press or something, your wrists feel like, you just feel really unsteady. That's why it's very, very hard when you're doing microsurgery. Those fine movements take a longer time to train than if you're doing big surgery, which is open and quite gross movements. The real delicate stuff using your fingertips, delicate small millimeters and so on. It's harder to train, but wastes away quite quick. Three, two, one. Yep.
Come on, get it up, get it up, get it up.
Yep. Fantastic, mate. Thank you. Whew. Bicep curls and research review. Straight into it. very complementary. We're warm. Biceps are nice and warm from the deadlift. So that's 10 on each side, plus the bar is 20, that's 40. Let's try and hit a 45 today. Getting that thickness, essential thickness in the bicep. Do love a good thick bicep. Woo. Protection, good for the summer, but mainly, not for vanity purposes, of course, mainly to protect you when you are doing the Zerk squats and the deadlift. Compound biceps is something we've not spoke about yet on this channel, but we have done. I mainly do it in the summer when we're doing the conditioning. The gymnasts, a lot of gymnasts use it when they're on the ropes. And essentially you're closing the bicep chain. So this is an open chain bicep exercise where my feet are fixed to the floor and my arms are moving. However, if we reverse that, where we fix the hands to something and move the arms, that closed chain, that closes the exercise down and hits the biceps in a slightly different way. So that really builds a deep, dense thickness in the biceps. Whew. Right. Let's get this. Move it around a little bit. See the bicep action. .45. This will be a new season's best as well. A new season's best. Yes. We like that. Almost every session. Right. Almost ready. tough first set, but it should get a little bit easier. It should do. Second time we go for it. How to know if this is too heavy for you when you're doing the barbell curl is you'll feel your elbows flaring out, especially with the flat bar, with the straight bar. I like the straight bar. I feel like it is a bit more strict on the forearms as well. It forces the forearm into complete supination and puts the tendon under a bit more direct stress. The easy bar, with, you may see them down there in the bottom corner. You know what the easy bar is, they got the little wave in the middle. I don't mind them. I tend to either use them to warm up or I use them in the summer when I'm doing conditioning on, let's say, like trying to get more reps out. I think it puts a nice different stress on the bicep and on the forearm as well. You can spin the easy bar around. The easy bar naturally wants to sit in one position, it will spin. And what you can do is if you hold it 180 degrees opposite from the way it wants to sit, there's a constant force going through the bar that it wants to rotate, like a kind of, is it an inertia or a torque? Like rotation around the axis, there's a slight torque in the bar that wants to spin, and that'll give you a bit more stress on the forearm and grip. So I really do like them, but for pure strength and power, I really like the straight bar. Obviously for the traps, for the biceps, for the forearms. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So hopefully it'll feel a bit easier in the next one, in the next set. It's good, don't be afraid to load up the bar. Yeah, I really like this. I've always liked it. Ooh. Do a couple more sets. Yeah, I feel full. So don't let your elbows flare out. And no lifting from the shoulders either. Try to really focus on, you've kind of got to think about like the movement in some ways to keep it really, really strict. Really engage your mind into what you want to activate. Yes, 5. And yes, I am hitting my biceps in the same rep range. Absolutely no harm in that. Yeah, look, 5, 6 reps. Absolutely no harm in that. It's a smaller muscle anyway, a lot smaller muscle. So there's a fair bit of weight on there. There's 45 kilos. I mean, some people bench press 45 kilos. So I'm pretty happy with that. It's not world record breaking, and I don't intend it to be, but is it going to stimulate me? Yes. So that's what I'm saying, like, don't compare yourself to others, like, you know, and whatever you can do suited to you that's going to stimulate you will work for you. Don't just copy others. There was a phase a while back, actually, when people were doing strict curl for some record, wasn't it? It's like 100 kilo record or something, I don't know what it is. But that's working. So do this, we'll do one more set and then we'll hit the review article. Same thing goes as well for the biceps, as well for the abs. You can load them up and you can hit them for 5 or 6 reps. I think that the common conception is that you have to do like 100 sit-ups or, you know, 200 sit-ups. And you can do that. You can do 200, 300 crunches. You know, if you're elite sports and boxing or whatever, and you know, and that's what you're doing. Of course, I'm not saying you cannot do that. It's fantastic. But personally, if you're trying to actually get thickness and stronger, you need to stimulate the muscle exactly the same way, which is load it up and hit it for that similar rep range that you would for the other global muscles as well. And the biceps and the abs will respond the same way. They will get bigger and thicker because ultimately the muscle and the cell, the muscle cell can only respond to the stress you give to it. So if you're going to do 100 or 200 sit-ups, you're telling the muscle to work for endurance and develop an aerobic capacity to work by turning over oxygen into energy. But if you're loading it up heavy and you're working for short bursts with a lot of volume for several sets, you're telling the muscle that you're putting it under strain and it needs to get bigger to cope with the demands of that stress, and it's going to work anaerobically. And that's where you really start to get the thickness coming in. You're working a different energy system and you're giving the muscle cell a different input. And that leads into some of today's article, which is about receptors, cell receptors, and the stimulation on the cell. And it seems that those cell receptors availability is peak and around for about 60 minutes after the exercise, after you finish training. Right, we'll see if we can do another set. Last one. See if we can get 5, 6 reps out. No swing, come on. Controlled negative. Five and a bit. Pretty happy with that, considering we did an extra set of deadlifts as well. Yeah. Right. Research review. Look at this paper. Looking forward. Always give yourself something to look forward to in life. It's my philosophy anyway. Righto, let's have a look at what time it is. It's time for research time. We'll have a look at this article. Yeah, so pull up a pew and let's learn. wow, what a session. I'm happy with that. And do you know what? And exactly as I said at the start of the season, like, you feel like energized after the session, and I've worked hard as well. You don't leave the gym feeling flat. Like, I feel like I could actually do that workout again, but to the point where I have worked hard enough. I obviously couldn't do it again because I would start to lag halfway through. But anyway, are we sitting comfortably? And let's talk about this article. So, research review. Here we go. So, today's article, I've chosen this for a couple of reasons, because it leads into a topic of testosterone and hormones and so on, which we'll get into more in the future. But I think this is really nice as well, because there's a lot of drop shipping and things going on at the moment at the time of recording this live, and people are absolutely head over heels. I'm going to get hit with a ball from behind, aren't I? People are absolutely infatuated and head over heels with ice dips, ice baths. The fancy name is cryotherapy, meaning cold treatment, cryotherapy. I'm gonna get bonked on the head by a ball. I'll just have to take it like a man. What I do need though is the old trusty banana and drink. Righto. So, the title of this article is Cold Water Immersion. So ice baths, mind you, it's not ice, is it? It's cold water. So cold water immersion blunts and delays increases in circulating testosterone and cytokines, or cytokines, if you're American, cytokines, post-resistance exercise. So what's that in English? Getting in a cold bucket of water after training reduces or blunts and delays increases in testosterone and inflammatory cells or inflammatory proteins that cause inflammation in the body. Okay, so this article is by Earp, Jacob E. Earp and colleagues, and it's published in 2018. It is an original article. It is a randomized controlled trial, and they have basically, so as you know in the research review, I want to present this obviously from a medical point of view, but also you've got to remember the majority of people are not medical and doctors and scientists and sports guys, so I'm going to do it in plain English, and then I might use some fancy terms and I will define them as usual. And that's not to be pretentious or snobby, because I try to avoid that at all costs, because I'm not that type of person anyway. Please keep the balls away from it when you get hit with a ball, aren't I? Right, so jumping in, so basically, does getting in cold water after training, like we have done today, exactly on this channel, what happens if I was to do that now? And essentially, after training exercise, what do? We induce muscle damage, soreness, and inflammation. Now, muscle damage, yes, inflammation, yes, but personally, I don't get soreness, and I've mentioned that before. But of course, if you are doing high volume, repetitive resistance training for a bodybuilding type, hypertrophy type goal, you're going to get some soreness. And the athletes that they used, I'm going to say athletes because they used 11 healthy men who had trained for at least 2 years, and they put them through a pretty grueling squat session. So, recent reports have warned that cold water immersion, it's so fancy, isn't it? Like getting in cold water, getting in a cold bath after working, may attenuate or reduce or stop adaptive responses to resistance training. Now, this is known because you do get the guys who are long distance runners, who are marathons, or people who are in a certain weight class, and they don't want to put on so much live tissue, muscle bulk building up. because it means they're carrying more live tissue through the marathon or through the weight class or whatever they've got if they're in a weight class sport. So cold water or ice immersion therapy has been used for a long time to attenuate or to stop or reduce or prevent too much muscle being built. So it's used in that respect as well. So they did this study to determine the levels and the effects of testosterone, cytokine, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Now it's known as tumor necrosis factor. So what's interleukin-6? It is essentially an inflammatory marker. So when you have some damage or some stress on the body, interleukin-6 is released, and you have lots of white cells and reparative growth factors come to that area to help. It's an upregulated signal, a protein signal. They are very interesting. There is a million interleukins, and they've always been discovered. Even as a doctor, it's hard to keep up. You do come across at medical school in immunology. You need to use your second brain, which is your smartphone, to keep up to date with them and read about what they are. They all do slightly different things, but they're more or less proteins that float around the body and tell other things what to do, that there's a target to come to in terms of inflammation or healing or growth, or even breakdown, some of them. And tumor necrosis factor has a couple of roles in the body, mainly inflammation and repair, and cell death, and insulin resistance. So it's got a couple of receptors, tumor necrosis factor receptor 1 and tumor necrosis factor, which I'm going to call TNF now. TNF receptor 1 and TNF receptor 2. Receptor 1 is to do with, correct me if I'm wrong, it's to do with inflammation and cell death, and receptor 2 is to do with growth and repair. So depending on which receptor is stimulated, the cell will respond accordingly. And secondly, tumor necrosis factor can behave in two ways according to the current science, which is growth as a growth and repair inflammation, or it can cause like a diabetes type insulin resistance. It's got some roles in doing that as well. So what happens in this study? So 11 men, resistance trained men, had 2 workouts of 6 to 10 reps, which is kind of fitting with our training, of a back squat at 80% of their maximum load. So they're working at, they're doing strength training. So these are strength trained guys, 80%, 6 to 10 reps, 1 week apart. So they did 2 sessions, okay? After they'd done the session, they jumped in the bucket of water for 15 minutes, right? So the 11 men were randomized, which means they were put into 2 different groups at random. You guys jump in the train, and you guys jump in the cold water for 15 minutes, and you don't do anything. You just chill out after your workout. And then they took blood samples at 3 or 4 different time intervals. So they did it before they trained, 5 minutes after, 15 minutes after, half an hour after, and 1 hour after they trained. So there's a lot of blood samples, and that's really good. So keywords for this study are cryotherapy, inflammation, hypertrophy, anabolic recovery, and ice. There is nothing to declare conflicts of interest from the authors, and they received a small bit of funding from, it wasn't any like big external company, it was a little graduate research award from the University of Rhode Island. So it's a reliable study. They're not like trying to tell you something. They've not been influenced or biased in an unnecessary way. So it's a 2018 study. So we've mentioned reducing muscle damage, muscle soreness, inflammation, whilst what we want to do really, so they want to increase strength, power, and recovery after exercise. However, some studies have also found that getting in cold water can attenuate or stop your strength and stop hypertrophy, and as I mentioned, the marathon runs, that can happen. So on a cellular level, which is, if we think in microscopic molecules, it usually works between cells, and there's some kind of signaling factor, and the signaling factor tells something else what to do, which tells the cell what to do. So it's usually a hormone that will act in a certain way, follow a pathway, and trigger off a cellular response. So that in this instance, it's something called mTOR. which is M for Mike and TOR, mTOR pathway. It's not a pathway that I've studied in detail, but for the purpose of this study, it's relevant because it's what testosterone will act on and increases something called kinase phosphorylation, which is the attachment of a phosphate molecule to cause a cellular response further down the line, which then tells the cell and the nucleus in the cell to produce more protein, essentially. So, not much is known about the effects of getting in cold water on upstream regulators of these pathways, and that is the testosterone and the interleukin 6 and the tumor necrosis factor. So, by getting in cold water, what is the upstream effects of those hormones and those sex hormones and those proteins? So studies have shown mixed results. So chronic resistance training, this is interesting, isn't it? So chronic resistance training on basal testosterone. I was going to do another study on basal testosterone studying because there's a lot of things say, you know, oh, if you do squats, it increases testosterone. If you do certain exercises, it increases testosterone. And actually, a lot of the studies are showing very mixed results in terms of that. So I haven't jumped on board in believing that. I think it needs to be looked at in more detail. And I do agree with what they say here because they've mentioned 3 studies to say that basal testosterone, that's like resting level testosterone, they've shown mixed results when you have trained long-term with resistance training. However, there are some studies that have shown a pulsatile release of testosterone from the testes, and then it returns to pre-exercise levels within an hour. So I do agree there's probably some short-term boost of testosterone after training, but within an hour, I mean, it's pretty much back to where it was. So the reason why they're looking at these hormones and these cytokines is because there is particular interest in the mTOR regulation of inflammation response and repair on cells. So let's get into it. What did they hypothesize? They think that after resistance training and then getting in cold water, they think that it's going to suppress and reduce testosterone, interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor, which basically tells you that you won't grow, you won't get sore, and you won't have too much muscle damage. Compared to a passive recovery. So the people that don't get in the cold water, they think that they're going to have more soreness, have more growth, and have better strength. So they're acting basically as a control group because they don't receive any treatment, which is all right, it's ethical in this situation. So 11 men, about 21 years of age, give or take 2 years, considers resistance trained, which have continually trained for 2 years, and squats have been one of their main exercise. The average squat was 126 kilos, which is fairly heavy. It's about 1.5 times the average person's body weight. So they were squatting 126, give or take 20 kilos, and they didn't have any injury, they didn't consume any alcohol, they didn't have any caffeine, and they were able to do a Smith machine squat. This is not a free weight squat that we do. So they did a Smith machine squat, which, okay, doesn't invalidate the study, but we don't really like Smith machine squats, do we? Strength testing session. So they all went on, all subjects underwent a strength testing session to test their level of strength and then calculate a percentage of that, what they need to lift that. Randomly assigned Smith machine back squat, as I've mentioned, and they had blood tests, as I mentioned, at 5 before they did it, 5, 15 and 30 minutes, and then 1 hour after training. The levels were measured. They also took a urine sample to make sure that all the patients, all the subjects were euvolemic, meaning they were hydrated adequately. They weren't dehydrated or overhydrated, because that can obviously affect the viscosity and the contents of the blood, the dilution of the blood. So they did a urine test. So do you know what? It's a pretty well-designed study. I mean, It's simple, they've got clear parameters, they've got clear objectives. So, 1 repetition with 90% of one rep max load with 3 minutes of passive recovery. That's interesting, isn't it? We do that. So, baseline measurements were obtained, and then when it comes to the actual study, they had a 5-minute rest, and they did 6 sets of 10 reps of Smith machine squats, 80% of their 1 rep max, with a 2-minute period rest. Every 2 minutes, if they couldn't do the reps, they slightly reduced the load, sensible. So they could always achieve 10 reps, so that's really, really good. So they've standardized that. So you had everyone doing the same reps, even if the load changed, the intensity was still the same. They tested the intensity by asking them, how do you feel? And they said, I feel really tired, and that feels really, really tiring. So they checked everybody to make sure they're working on a feedback score to say and tell them how hard they're working. So they had a blood test, and those testosterone levels and the interleukins and the tumor necrosis factor were tested, and they jumped in a 100-gallon tub of 15 degrees. So it's not quite ice water, but 15 degrees is pretty cold. And given their results, I'm assuming that if it was any colder, you would expect similar or the same results. So the reason why they've selected this is because it's saying here that in previous studies, getting into cold water of a low temperature after workout between 11 and 15 degrees for 15 minutes has shown that there's been suggestion of a reduction in these hormones in the body and these inflammatory markers. So they want us to look at it more detail, because some of them have looked at after 2 hours, but there's no studies been done where they've looked at it within the hour. So, flying through this now. So, they looked at lactate as well. I don't think we mentioned lactate before. Lactate is a byproduct of sugar breakdown, essentially, and it's used by the muscles when the muscles are working anaerobically. And given their exercise range and the reps and sets they were doing, these guys are working anaerobically. So I won't go into it. You can follow this, because the link for this article will be in the description of the video, as well as the reference. So basically, they followed all laboratory procedures fantastically. They've done ELISA tests and assays to determine the levels of these hormones. So as I just mentioned, so the statistical analysis. So they've used an analysis of variance, which is the right test to do, really. They've got one group of people going into 2 different groups, and one independent variable, which is the ice. So does the ice influence their training? And it's independent of the training. So look, they've used the right thing. And then they've made corrections on, because they're using the same data and analysing the statistics again and again. They've used a correction test as well called Bonferroni's correction test. So fantastic. Anyway, yeah, look, it's a well-designed study. They've done appropriate analysis. So similar levels of exertion. So they felt the athletes were working to a similar level of intensity, and that's fine, which was determined as very strong to extremely strong. Fantastic. They all had a significant increase in lactate, which you would expect. They had a significant level in testosterone concentration after training, which was similar to the blood test before they trained. So testosterone level before they trained was at a certain level, and then after they finished training, they found that they had a similar level of testosterone in both conditions of ice and no ice, 30 minutes and 1 hour after. However, the people who got in the cold water at the 60-minute mark, the people who got in the cold water after 1 hour, their blood test showed they actually had lower testosterone levels than before they started exercising. That's interesting. When compared to the control group, lower tumor necrosis factor concentration were observed in the cold water immersion. So those that, again, so that's the same thing. So those that got in the cold water actually had lower tumor necrosis factor after 5 minutes and 15 minutes. Then it leveled out after about half an hour and 60 minutes, and it was not significant. So what have they said in their discussion from this? So they quote, testosterone response where concentrations increase from pre and 5 minutes after 15 minutes return to baseline values at half an hour in both conditions. That's interesting, isn't it? And then after half an hour, less testosterone observed in cold water immersion. These results suggest, I quote, that these results suggest that cold water immersion reduces acute testosterone response after resistance training. And that is attributed in other studies to decreased protein synthesis. So that affects the mTOR pathway, which we mentioned earlier, and protein synthesis, and the upstream role of testosterone is reduced. So essentially, yeah, it's reducing testosterone levels, which means you get less protein synthesis, which means you're going to produce and build less muscle mass. Fantastic. So what are the conclusions from this? And then we'll talk about my thoughts on this as well. So they've concluded that 15 minutes of cold water immersion therapy after an intense bout of exercise will reduce and blunt your testosterone levels within the 60 minutes and the inflammatory cytokine response and the tumor necrosis factor. So the only issue is, so that's interesting. And the data that they've showed in the graphs here, which you'll see in the study when you look at it, what you've got to remember is remember those guys that got in the cold water, they were in that cold water the first 15 minutes, so they were still having blood tests in the water. And what you'll notice is after half an hour, when they pretty much got out the water bath, you actually see the largest changes. So between half an hour and 1 hour, the levels of interleukin-6 went up, testosterone continued to decrease, and tumor necrosis factor stayed about the same, but the difference in the levels was significant. So it's very interesting that by getting in cold water, you actually end up with a lower testosterone level 1 hour after the exercise. Now, what could cause that? If we think on our cellular level, the cells will respond to stress. So if you're exerting your body to stress high resistance training, your cells are going to upregulate and they're going to produce receptors that will be on the surface of the cell looking out for hormones such as testosterone and inflammatory markers. When you take that stress away, which seems to be in this case after 1 hour, it has less an effect on the cell, assuming that those receptors are removed by the cell because the stress and the stimulus is no longer there. If you compound that by jumping in cold water as well, you're producing less of an inflammatory response in testosterone, especially after the first half an hour. So you've got less testosterone inflammatory response, plus you've not got any stimulus of exercise anymore. So the cell removes those receptors. So and then, of course, it's not going to grow because, as I mentioned, it responds to stimulation. I think that's a well-designed study, and I think it does mirror other studies that I've read where they've looked at testosterone levels and inflammatory markers and the effects of exercise 2 to 3 hours afterwards, and they've measured blood tests. But this is an interesting study because they've done it in the acute phase, which is within the first hour. So I know there's a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon and going, oh, jump in an ice bath, but you really have to think about why you're doing it. I think, are you in a sport where you have to hit a certain weight class? Are you in a sport that you don't want to, you want to keep fit, get strong and train, but you don't want to be putting on too much muscle because you are running a marathon and you need to stay quite slim? You're working at an aerobic level. Would I do that for my type of training now? Not really, because I want to have some regulated inflammation. I want to have regulated stimulus, and I want my testosterone levels to go up within that acute phase, even if it's for that first 60 minutes. So I want to keep myself in an anabolic state, particularly for the first hour afterwards. And talking of which, that means I need to get my banana down me and some fluids. So that leads us on to talk about other studies as well, which we will do, in terms of testosterone production after exercise. But I think that's a really accurate study, and it does mirror other studies out there, and it does mirror a lot of the data and scientific findings that we're finding about the effects of exercise and this post-training recovery period. And I think the science behind it is fantastic, and the sports science used at the highest levels of sports, football, athletes, Olympics, you know, the understanding of the data that we've got now is absolutely fantastic. So hope that's helpful, and another research review. Stay strong, and I'll see you next time. on another live lift. All right, see you later.